Dear fellow believers, grace to you and peace from God our Father, from our Lord and Savior. Amen. You've heard that old saying, right? There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Well, watch out. That could be the train coming from the other direction, and you know what would happen. Sometimes we say things without thinking what the impact is going to be, what it means, or the full implication of it. When God sent Jesus into the world as the light of the world, the implications were massive. The consequences were dire. And the ruler of this world wasn't going to sit still. When Jesus arrives, Satan goes to work. I don't know if this story is true. It's not mine. I read it. I would like to believe it's true, and I think you probably would too, simply because of what it tells. It tells a truth greater than us. But it's a story of about a group of missionaries in Central Africa many, many years ago. And they're walking through the countryside, and they come to this huge village. And there's nobody there. And they get a little worried because they know they're amongst cannibals. And as they walk into that village, they see everybody at the far end. And then everybody starts running toward them, and they thought, well, they're now going to be the bread of life for whoever eats them. And as they got up there, the chief stopped, and he said something to the translator, and the translator's face kind of got all scrunched up. And then the missionary said, what did he say? And the translator looked back at the missionaries, and he said to him, well, the chief says, what took you so long? See, many, many, many years ago, as the story unfolds, there was a bright light one night that just illuminated everything, woke them from their sleep and startled them. And it was that direction. And they had a big marker up there. And then somebody ran off and they came back with this carving, and they turned around and looked. Here is what we would call an angel. It's a person with a white face and glorious white, and they carried it for centuries. And they had repainted it. And they said that this image, this person had come and said, don't worry, somebody's going to tell you what that is. They're coming soon. What took you so long? God's light had come into their world, and it wasn't completely revealed. What took them so long? When we get to this time of our season, Christmas is over, we're starting to take off the decorations and move back into the blahness of winter and snow and cold. And yet God is resident, the light of the world. You know, each and every day after Christmas, we have longer periods of light. Look out the windows. I give you freedom now to look out the windows, even though I'm preaching. Isn't it bright? And it's glorious. Because God is coming to this kingdom. And sometimes, often, all too often, we forget the glory and the joy of God. We just came through an awful season. There was some people that are afraid that December 21st was, what? The end. As though the Mayans have more to say about the creation than the Creator. And there were people genuinely worried about that. Then we went through the fiscal cliff. And all that that's going to cost. We are a people who are forced by our society to live with this sense of fear and bloating. We went to Sweden in November and December of 1999. And everybody was worried about what happening. Jets falling out of the air, all this other stuff happening. I listened to one pilot who said, I'm more worried about my wife than I am about this. And I said, what's wrong with your wife? Nothing. Did you get that? We are told by our society to worry about each and every little thing. And yet you live with a God who comes and brings you great joy of this great news. The news that Jesus has come. Your Redeemer lives. And we tell ourselves that story over and over each and every year. I was listening to a talk show on the radio, and we were doing a lot of driving between here and Minnesota the last couple of weeks. And they were talking about things, and they were trying to come to grips with what one group of people calls war on Christianity. I think it's a good war. Go ahead. My God's big enough to take anything your God can dish out. But yet we're worried about war and Christianity. Hey, you don't have to worry about it if you're a Christian. It isn't going to affect you if you carry the light of God deep in you. It's not going to destroy you if you believe in the Creator who gave you life. And yet we're worried about things like that. And we come to this text today. And we have three people from distant lands. And it says Orient. It says from the east. And if you read the ancient texts that are in China from the astronomers about what happened. And I had the great opportunity to be an intern supervisor. Last person they wanted to be the supervisor, and the last person they asked. I'm not conventional when it comes to those sorts of things. But he had a master's in Far Eastern religion and philosophy. And he says, if you read those texts from China and that area, you will see that they spent a great deal of time looking at that light and talking about it. And they were astronomers. They triangulated it. And they came to this point, and they had a confab, and they said, it's over there. We better figure out what that is. It was an anomaly. It was something that did not belong. It was something that grasped a hold of them, and then it wouldn't let go. And so they talked about it, and they decided this was so great they needed to take things with them as gifts to whoever that light was shining upon. And off they went, not knowing where they're going, but following that light. They went there. They heard the story and they brought it back. And they wrote about the very story that we share. It had been revealed to them. And yet, they returned to live in darkness. That's what this whole text is about. That's why Epiphany was so important for the ancient people and the early church. It is that moment when light breaks through darkness. In the midst of everything this world can do, the faithful people stood outside, letting the warmth of those fires, the light of those flames, and those moments with one another, to wash over them. And to stand and look at the world and say, God wins. God wins. And because God wins, so do I, and so do you.
Amen.
And so, when we get to Epiphany, we don't end Christmas. We embody it. They want a war on Christmas? So be it. You're not warriors. You're reflectors. Today, may you reflect God's love to the loveless, God's hope to those who have none, and the light of eternity into the darkness of this life which is temporal for all who God created. Amen.